A kid gets his face caved in so badly that 3 different people mistake him for a plastic surgery patient. A sadistic gang boss ends up permanently blind in one eye and wheelchair-bound for life, and he never even saw the punch coming. A boy who started the story getting used as a literal chair by school bullies walks into an underground death tournament and wins the whole thing. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, one guy fires a sniper rifle from across a campus to save his friend, and he's supposed to be a high school student. Rewind. Because none of that makes sense yet, and we need to go back to the very beginning. Kim Doyle is not a normal transfer student. He is not the kind of new kid who sits quietly in the back row and hopes nobody bothers him. He is the son of the man who runs Blackhead, the single most dangerous assassin organization on the planet. His father's people have toppled governments. They have eliminated targets that entire police forces couldn't touch. Doyle himself, before he ever set foot in a Korean high school, already had a Yakuza boss and a Colombian presidential candidate on his personal body count. So when he walks into Suman High School on his first day carrying nothing but a casual expression and a very specific need for money, the local bullies have absolutely no idea what they are inviting into their building. Here is the setup. Doyle's mother took him and his younger brother and moved back to South Korea. His father, being the kind of man who thinks freezing his estranged family's bank accounts is a reasonable response to a separation, has cut off every one. Doyle is genuinely, legitimately broke. He needs cash. And Suman High, it turns out, is absolutely drowning in exactly the kind of problem that a trained assassin's son can solve for a fee. The school runs on a ranking system. At the top of the food chain sit the strongest fighters, the rank 1, the rank 2, the boss. Below them, everyone else either pays protection money, runs errands, or gets beaten into submission on a regular schedule. Weak students get shaken down for lunch money. They get used as furniture. They get their faces rearranged for sport. The teachers either don't know or don't care, and in some cases are actively working with the bullies to keep the system running. Doyle walks into his new classroom and assesses all of this in approximately 30 seconds. The rank 2 of the class spots the new kid and does what rank 2s do. He starts the welcome hazing. He rolls up with his crew expecting to establish dominance the way they always do, with size and aggression and the social weight of everyone already knowing not to interfere. Doyle knocks him out before the kid finishes his opening line. Then the rank 1 gets up, because of course he does. You can't let your rank 2 go down without a response. That's just bad brand management in the delinquent hierarchy. The rank 1 is bigger, more experienced, already calculating how to handle this weird new transfer. Doyle puts him down in the same motion, almost. 1, 2, and both of the classroom's top fighters are on the floor before anyone has processed what happened. The rest of the class does not move. They are doing the math, and the math is terrifying. This is the moment that a scrawny, round-faced kid named Ma Donggu decides to take a chance. Donggu is everything the school's bullying system was designed to target. He is physically soft, not particularly intimidating, clearly has money because of his family's background, and has the kind of face that says, "Please don't hit me," even when he is trying to look confident. He has been on the receiving end of this school's cruelty for long enough that he walks through the halls with his shoulders already hunched, already bracing. But Donggu is also, it turns out, quietly brilliant in one specific way. He watches Doyle lay out 2 of the most feared guys in the class in under 10 seconds, and he walks over and makes a business proposal. 50,000 won per bully. Doyle, who is calculating grocery costs in his head and already resenting his father deeply, looks at this nervous kid who is trying very hard to project confidence, and says yes. This is how the anime club is born. Not officially, not yet, but this is the moment. A broke assassin's son and a bullied rich kid shaking on a cash for combat arrangement that sets every single thing in motion. Word travels fast in a school like Suman. By the end of the first week, the story of the new transfer putting down the top fighters without breaking a sweat has made its way through every classroom and hallway. The existing power structure does not like this. It creates questions. Questions create instability. And instability is bad for business when your business is running a protection racket on minors. The hidden rulers of Suman High are the judo twins, Park Ju-hyung and Park Ju-dong. They haven't been operating openly because they don't need to. Their reputation keeps things in order. People know they exist. People know what happens to anyone who causes problems. They have been the invisible ceiling above every other ranking in the school, and they have never had to show themselves to maintain control. Doyle coming in and demolishing their visible power structure is the kind of thing that requires a response. The twins come out. Now here is what you need to understand about a judo practitioner fighting someone from Doyle's background. Judo is devastating in the right circumstances. Trained grapplers can throw people twice their size, can take a dominant position and control a fight completely, can make raw strength almost irrelevant through leverage and technique. The twins have been using this to run Suman High unchallenged because nobody they have ever faced could stop what they were doing. Doyle is not nobody. The moment one of them reaches for the grip that starts a judo sequence, Doyle reads it. He knows where the weight is shifting. He knows where the hands need to go to complete the throw. And because he knows all of that, he is already not where they need him to be. The fight doesn't go the way any judo fight goes. It goes the way a blackhead assassin wants it to go, which is short, brutal, and completely one-sided from the moment it starts. Both twins go down. Suman High has a new ceiling. At this point, Donggu is watching all of this with a growing mixture of awe and complicated emotion. He hired Doyle for protection. What he is getting is a front-row seat to someone systematically dismantling the entire power structure of the school. And every bully who goes down represents a person who will not hit Donggu again, which means that somewhere underneath the nervousness and the careful calculation, Donggu is starting to feel something that resembles safety for the first time in a long time. That feeling is about to get tested. Because Suman High sits inside a larger ecosystem. The school is surrounded by other schools with their own rankings and their own bosses, and all of those schools exist within a network called the 12 Nations, a regional delinquent syndicate that controls gambling, extortion, and various other enterprises running through the school system. When Suman's local hierarchy collapses and word starts spreading about who collapsed it, the 12 Nations takes notice. Specifically, Ilgyung High takes notice. Ilgyung is one of the big players in the regional network. Their top fighters are serious. Their boss, a psychopath named Bae Cheol, did not get to the top by being reasonable about challenges to his authority. And their number 2, a fighter people call the Ghost, Im Jong-chan, is exactly the kind of person that name implies. He moves through spaces that other people think are covered. He gets to places no one expects him to reach. He is methodical and cruel in a way that is much more unsettling than simple aggression. The response Ilgyung sends is not a conversation, it is a statement. Im Jong-chan's people come to Suman High, and they make an example. They beat students in the hallways. They make it clear that whatever new arrangement Suman thinks it has, Ilgyung operates above it. And to punctuate the point, to make sure nobody misses how serious this is, Im Jong-chan personally finds the school's discipline teacher, a man named Wang Dochul who has been trying for years to do right by these students through legitimate channels, and stabs him. Not metaphorically, not a threat, an actual knife in the stomach, in front of students, in broad view. Wang Dochul survives. But what this does to him is in some ways worse than the physical wound. He is lying in a hospital bed afterward, and he is crying. Not from pain, from shame. Because he has spent his entire career trying to protect these kids through official means, through authority and rules and the system left him bleeding on the floor while the people he was trying to protect watched. He keeps apologizing to students who come to visit him, keeps saying he should have been stronger, keeps taking responsibility for a failure that isn't remotely his fault. That moment, Wang Dochul sobbing in that hospital bed, is one of the heaviest beats in the whole story. It is the story putting a human face on what these gang systems actually cost. The adults who try to help are not just ineffective, they get punished for trying. The cruelty is structural. It is designed. Doyle does not respond with paperwork. He goes to Ilgyung High, by himself. He brings 2 things, a modified Glock, loaded with high-impact rubber bullets, because he is trying to send messages, not create homicide investigations, and a janitorial cart, because why not use the environment when it's available? He walks into Ilgyung High's territory the same way he walked into Suman's classroom, with the complete absence of the kind of fear that would make a normal person hesitate. The first wave of fighters comes at him and discovers what rubber bullets at close range feel like. The answer is, not pleasant. They do not penetrate skin, but they hit with enough impact to take someone completely out of a fight, and Doyle is precise enough that he doesn't waste shots. He moves through the school's defenders with the economy of someone who has done far worse in far more dangerous places and found this deeply unimpressive by comparison. He finds Park Jin-gu. Park Jin-gu is Il-gyung's rank 3, and he is completely unlike what you'd expect from someone in that position at a school like this. He is not a thug. He is obsessive about physical training in a way that is almost philosophical. He believes deeply that muscle and conditioning are the path to everything worth having. He is strong in a genuine, earned way. He has discipline, he has pride. He also has not met anyone like Doyle before. The fight between them is the first one in this story that feels like it has some actual back and forth to it. Jin-gu is good. He hits hard, he takes hits without crumbling, and he fights with intelligence rather than just aggression. Doyle has to actually work, not in a way that puts him in danger, but in a way that requires him to actually engage rather than simply ending things immediately. He wins, of course. The outcome was never really in question, but how he wins matters, because Jin-gu feels the gap, feels exactly how much space exists between his best and Doyle's comfortable. And that gap does something to Jin-gu that getting beaten by a stronger opponent doesn't always do. It creates obsession, not resentment, not anger. Pure, burning obsession with closing that distance. Jin-gu swears loyalty. Not right away. That comes later. But the seed is planted the moment Doyle walks away, and Jin-gu is sitting on the ground, understanding for the first time that there is a ceiling above him he didn't know existed. Then Im Young-boom goes down. Jong-chan's direct subordinate, someone who has been running Il-gyung's enforcement operations, neutralized in the same visit. But Jong-chan himself is not at the school, and Jong-chan is not the kind of person who responds to a territorial incursion by coming at you directly. He is the ghost for a reason. He goes after Dong-gu. This is the calculation. Doyle is untouchable in a direct fight. That much is now established. But Doyle has a client. A soft, nervous, physically unimpressive client who walks the same streets every day. And Jong-chan decides that the way to get to Doyle is to go through the one person Doyle has a financial contract to protect. He finds Dong-gu, and he asks him a simple question. Where is Doyle? Dong-gu doesn't answer. So Jong-chan makes him regret that. What follows is one of the most genuinely difficult sequences in the story to read. Because it is not a fight, it is not two people competing. It is a sadistic, methodical interrogation performed on someone who has no ability to fight back, by someone who is very experienced at finding the exact things that will break a person. Jong-chan slashes Dong-gu's face. He threatens his eyes. He makes specific, detailed promises about what happens next if Dong-gu doesn't cooperate. Dong-gu does not give up Doyle's location. He just doesn't. Through everything Jong-chan does, through the pain and the fear, and the very credible threats about what is coming next, Dong-gu holds. It is not because he is brave in a dramatic sense. It is not some heroic transformation. It is something quieter and more stubborn than that. A refusal to betray the one person who made him feel like he didn't have to be afraid anymore, even at serious cost to himself. By the time Doyle arrives, Dong-gu is in bad shape. Doyle looks at what Jong-chan has done. And then something shifts in the way this fight is going to go, because this is no longer about a contract or a fee. This is about someone hurting someone under Doyle's protection. And the version of Doyle that shows up for that is different from the one who walked into Il-gyung High with professional efficiency. Jong-chan moves. He is fast, genuinely fast, with knife skills that have worked on everyone he has ever used them on. He is not slow and he is not sloppy, and he has years of experience in exactly this kind of situation. He cannot touch Doyle. Not once, not even close. Every attack finds nothing. Empty air, a shifted angle, a weight distribution that was never where Jong-chan aimed. Jong-chan has been the ghost his entire career, the person who gets through guards that other people can't penetrate. And now he is fighting someone who makes him feel like the ghost, like he isn't even registering as a presence. The moment Jong-chan fully understands this, the fight is over psychologically. The physical part is just the closing formality. Doyle's uppercut ends it. Jong-chan's jaw caves. Wang Dokul is crying in a hospital bed, and nobody is coming to fix the system that put him there. That image keeps coming back because the story keeps returning to it. Not explicitly, not with a character referencing it or a scene that calls back to the hospital room directly, but structurally. The emotional architecture of this story has Wang Dokul's breakdown at its foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. Here is what Wang Dokul represents. He is the legitimate institution. He is the answer that is supposed to exist. The teacher, the authority figure, the adult in the building whose job is exactly the thing that is being done so badly by everyone else in the ecosystem. He knows what is happening to his students. He has tried every channel available to him. He has filed reports, escalated concerns, pressed administration, contacted authorities. He has done everything the system designed for exactly this purpose would have him do. And Im Jong-chan walked into his school and stabbed him in the stomach in front of children. The story is not subtle about what this means. It is saying, with the bluntness that defines its approach to everything, the legitimate institutions have failed. Not through incompetence, not through lack of effort or sincerity. Wang Dokul is sincere. He is genuinely devoted to the students he is responsible for. The failure is structural. The tools available to legitimate authority are inadequate to the problem, and the people who hold power within those institutions either do not understand what they are facing or are actively in the pocket of what they are facing. The corrupt police officers are the second prong of this argument. Their presence in the story is not detailed at length. They are not major characters with developed motivations and screen time. They are facts. They exist. The 12 Nations operates with a degree of impunity that requires corruption in the police infrastructure to maintain, and the story acknowledges this without making it a subplot to be resolved. It is environmental. It is background. It is the reason that Wang Dokul's reports went nowhere, and the reason that Bei Chaol could run his operation for as long as he ran it without external interference. This is important for understanding why Doyle is the protagonist rather than, say, a competent detective or a reform-minded school administrator. The story has thought about why the legitimate response to this situation does not work and built that into the world's operating logic. The corrupt police are not a complication to be overcome. They are a feature of the landscape that explains why the landscape looks the way it does. Into this landscape Doyle arrives, and Doyle is emphatically not a legitimate institution. He is the opposite of legitimate, an assassin's son taking cash contracts to beat up bullies, operating entirely outside the legal and administrative structures that have already demonstrated their inadequacy. He is the solution that the situation produces when legitimate solutions fail, not the solution anyone would design in advance. The solution that emerges from a specific set of conditions when the designed and advanced solutions stop working. This is a very old story structure. The hero who exists outside the law because the law cannot do what needs doing. It shows up in westerns and noir and action films across decades and cultures because it addresses something real about the gap between institutional design and human reality. Institutions are built to handle typical cases at scale. They are not built to handle the specific, acute, locally organized violence of a Bei Chaol or a Q Jin in any time frame that matters for the people currently living under it. Doyle handles it in a time frame that matters. What the story does interestingly with this structure is refuse to make Doyle a moral exemplar. He is not a righteous vigilante who cares deeply about justice and has chosen this path because the system failed good people. He is a guy who needs grocery money. The moral outcome, bullies stopped, students protected, criminal enterprises dismantled, is a byproduct of a financial transaction. The story trusts the viewer to hold both things simultaneously. This outcome is good, and the person producing it is not doing it for the reasons we would want someone to do it for. That tension is productive. It asks the question that the vigilante hero structure usually papers over. What is the moral status of a good outcome produced by a person operating outside all legitimate frameworks for reasons that have nothing to do with the good outcome? The story does not answer this question. It just keeps generating it every time Doyle takes a payment for something that resulted in real protection for real people who needed it. The 12 Nations as a structure is worth examining as a system rather than just as a collection of opponents to defeat. Because the story is engaging with something real about how criminal enterprises embed themselves in institutions, and the school setting is not accidental. Schools are the specific institution the story chose. Not because schools are uniquely prone to this kind of corruption, the story implies the police are equally compromised, but because schools are the institution that is supposed to be doing the most important thing, shaping what young people become. The 12 Nations has colonized that process. It has taken the institution that determines who people get to be and turned it into a pipeline for criminal enterprise, using the social hierarchies that schools naturally generate as the organizational structure for something that serves no one inside it. The ranking systems, boss, rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, are not invented by the 12 nations. They are school social hierarchies, the natural product of putting adolescents together in a competitive environment and watching them sort themselves. Every school has versions of this. The 12 nations has not created something alien. It has taken something ordinary and redirected it toward extraction. This is why the corruption is so difficult to address through legitimate means. You cannot simply remove the criminal hierarchy because it is built on top of a social hierarchy that will persist regardless. Remove Beicheol and someone else fills the position, because the position exists in the social fabric independently of the person occupying it. The 12 nations understood this and structured itself accordingly, parasitic on something that cannot be eliminated, drawing energy from a host that regenerates. Doyle's approach to this problem is not systemic. He does not address the underlying social hierarchy. He addresses the specific, identified worst actors at the top of the specific worst schools and makes occupying those positions visibly, memorably expensive. He is not curing the disease. He is raising the cost of the disease's most harmful expressions past the point where the people currently expressing them are willing to pay it. This is, again, a realistic rather than idealistic solution. The story is not interested in pretending that the 12 nations structure goes away when Beicheol is in a wheelchair and Hwarong's drug lab is raided. It goes away, if it goes away, because the cost-benefit calculation for everyone still operating within it shifts. Because the example of what happened to the people at the top of it makes the next generation of people considering those positions think twice. Because the visible, permanent consequences distributed across a semester of Doyle's activity in Seoul create a different environment for anyone trying to maintain what the 12 nations was. This is deterrence rather than justice. The story is honest about that distinction. The people who got hurt by the 12 nations before Doyle arrived do not get their experiences undone. The student who was forced at knife point to stab Donggu, Songchol, breaking down in tears over his helplessness in that moment, does not stop having that experience. Wang Dokkel's hospital room breakdown does not unhappen. The accumulated damage of years of systematic abuse to students across multiple schools does not get addressed by Doyle putting the bosses in wheelchairs and on the ground. What changes is the forward trajectory. What Doyle produces is a different future, not a corrected past. The story is clear-eyed about this in a way that a simpler revenge fantasy would not be. Sangchol's moment is worth holding for a second, because it represents something the story does consistently well. The named victims of the 12 Nations system are not props. They are specific people with specific reactions to specific violations. Sangchol is not a background extra who exists to motivate the hero. He is someone whose particular horror, being made to hurt someone else, being weaponized against another victim, is its own category of damage, distinct from simply being beaten. He was made complicit. That is a different wound than the ones that heal with time and distance. The story shows you enough of that wound to understand what it means without lingering on it past the point of purpose. This is the appropriate calibration for a story that is primarily action and that has a lot of ground to cover. It does not pretend the human cost is simple. It does not turn every victim's story into a subplot. It acknowledges the cost specifically and moves forward. Dong Hook, the student being abused by Sukdong members when Doyle encounters the situation, another specific name, a brief but real presence, enough to make the intervention legible as something happening to an actual person rather than an abstract problem being solved. The story keeps doing this, attaching individual names and faces to the problem that Doyle is solving so that the solution does not become abstract either. This is why the Wang Dokkel moment lands as hard as it does. He is the most developed version of this approach. He has been in the story long enough to feel real, to have the shape of a person trying to do right in a system that is working against him, and the hospital room is not a plot point. It is a reckoning. It is the story demanding that you feel what the system costs its most devoted servants. Now, the question of what justice looks like in this world, given that the legitimate justice system is compromised and Doyle's version of justice is deterrence applied through force, the permanent consequences are the story's answer. Beicheol's eye in hand. These are not accidents, and they are not excessive relative to what Cheol did. They are calibrated. Doyle took from Cheol the specific physical capacities that made him dangerous, in a way that is visible and permanent, and public enough to communicate to everyone watching what the cost of being Bei Cheol is. The wheelchair is not punishment in a legal sense. It is information, broadcast through the 12 Nations Network, about what happens when you build an empire on the model Cheol built his on. Im Jong-chan's shattered jaw is similar. The ghost cannot ghost his way past people anymore. Not because of any formal consequence, not because of any process, but because a jaw that was rebuilt has a story attached to it that everyone who asks about it will hear. Every conversation Jong-chan has for the rest of his life happens against the background of that story. That is its own kind of permanent consequence. The story is not naive about whether this is justice. It is not pretending that Doyle's intervention produces anything that the legitimate system would recognize as an appropriate resolution. It is saying that in the absence of a functioning legitimate system, this is what you get. This is the rough, imprecise, outcome-focused version of accountability that emerges when the designed-in-advance accountability structures have stopped working. And then it keeps going. Because the other question the story is asking, quietly, is what happens to the person who provides this service over time. Doyle started with 50,000 won per bully. A financial transaction with no emotional component beyond the irritation at needing the money. Somewhere across 3 school arcs and a month on Jeju Island and a multi-front night raid on a drug manufacturing operation, the financial transaction has accumulated things around it that a financial transaction is not supposed to accumulate. He has people, not clients, not operational assets, people who photograph him in group shots after training sessions and follow him into buildings they have no business entering because he is going in and they have decided that is reason enough. People who refused to give up his location while a knife was being applied to their face. People who went over the edge of a platform to honor a debt they incurred by sitting on someone. That is not a client relationship. That is not a contractor and his vendors. That has become something that the word anime club only half jokes about. A chosen group, assembled through extraordinary circumstances, bound by the specific kind of loyalty that only forms when people go through genuinely difficult things together and come out the other side still standing. Doyle is not equipped for this. His entire formation, Blackhead, his father's world, the training and the philosophy and the understanding of what people are and what relationships cost, has prepared him for operational contexts, not relational ones. He knows how to read an opponent, he knows how to calculate risk and select responses, and operate efficiently toward defined objectives. He does not know what to do with Park Kang-wook going over a platform to pay a debt to Ma Donggu, because Donggu once gave him a revival coupon with a stamp on it. That specific sequence of events is not computable within Doyle's existing framework. It requires a category he does not have ready. The story is building that category in him. Not through speeches or romantic moments or dramatic declarations. Through accumulation. Every group photo. Every time he designed a training program that went beyond the minimum necessary for the contract. Every rubber bullet instead of a real one. Every careful calibration of consequence that chose deterrence over elimination. Doyle is developing something that his father's world did not build into him and that he did not come to Korea looking for. The story has not named it yet. It does not need to name it. The accumulation of evidence is the argument, which brings the story back to the question of the father. Duong runs the world's largest assassination network. He made his family's mother cry and froze the bank accounts of his estranged children and is currently watching, through whatever information channels Blackhead maintains, through Gwiwan, through the intelligence that an organization of that caliber would naturally gather about the activities of the leader's son in a foreign city, watching his son take 50,000 won contracts to beat up school bullies and build an anime club. What Duong makes of all of this is the question the story has been deferring. Because Doyle's entire project in Seoul, the financial independence, the local operations, the chosen family of reformed bullies and obsessive fitness devotees, and one girl who keeps calling him her husband, is, on some level, a response to his father. An argument, a demonstration. I can build something. I can use what you built me to be in service of something you did not design and cannot control. I do not need your money or your organization or your approval. That argument has been made, across 5 arcs, in the most concrete possible terms. The anime club exists, Donggu has a Death 10 medal, Jingu is lying broken on the floor of Hwaronghai having refused to beg, Kongwook honored a debt he didn't have to honor, and Doyle is holding a sniper rifle, waiting to find out if the shot was enough. His father has not responded yet. When he does, the story changes scale. The shot has been fired. Everything else can wait, because that is where the story lives right now, suspended in the half-second between a sniper round leaving a barrel and the world reorganizing itself around whatever that round produces. Park Jingu is on the floor with 3 broken things and the specific kind of pain that arrives after the adrenaline has been spent and the body starts sending accurate reports about the damage. Kyu-jin is mid-motion toward a kill, and Doyle is somewhere across a dark campus with a rifle and a calculated angle and the absolute stillness that a precision shot requires. Let's stay in that moment for a second, because it is the image the first arc ends on, and images that stories choose to end on are never accidental. Doyle with a sniper rifle is not the same image as Doyle with rubber bullet Glocks wading through 87 gang members with professional efficiency. The Glocks are close-range tools. They require being in the building, in the room, present in the immediate physical space of the problem. The sniper position is something different. It is distance, patience, a line of sight maintained across space while other things are happening, a shot timed to a specific moment rather than improvised in the chaos of direct engagement. It is the blackhead version of Doyle, not the high school mercenary version, not the anime club version, the version his father built. And he is using it to save Park Jingu. That detail matters enormously. The most elite technique available to him, the one that most clearly reveals what his father's organization actually made him, gets deployed not for an operational objective, not for money, not for any reason that fits inside the original 50,001 contract framework. It gets deployed because Jingu is on the floor, and Kyu-jin is moving, and there is no other solution fast enough. The blackhead technique in service of the anime club. His father's tools protecting the chosen family his father had no hand in building. If Duong is watching, and Duong is watching, that is the image his intelligence feeds him. His son, trained to the most precise standard in the world's foremost assassination organization, using a sniper shot to protect a muscle-obsessed kid from a rival school who swore loyalty after a defeat and then spent a year making himself worth something. The story has not told us what Duong thinks about any of this. It has not needed to. The setup is clear enough that the eventual conversation between father and son is already audible in the structure, even before it happens. Every choice Doyle has made in Seoul is a sentence in an argument with his father. The sniper shot ending the first arc is, thematically, the period at the end of the argument's opening statement. Now look at what the story has assembled. Suman High is no longer what it was when Doyle transferred in. The classroom where Rank 1 and Rank 2 went down in 10 seconds is occupied now by a different kind of energy. Not the enforced quiet of intimidation, but something that might be the beginning of an actual community. Students who spent years operating under extortion and fear have watched, from close range, what happens when the model gets challenged by something it was not designed to handle. That watching produces things. It produces Ma Donggu standing at the front of the school, not because he was appointed, but because he earned it, in the most direct and undeniable way available. It produces students who have seen that the ranking system is not a natural law, that it was maintained by force and can be unmade by force, and that the question of who gets to apply force is not as settled as they were told. This is the cultural shift the story gestures toward without over-explaining. The 12 Nations model works because people inside it have internalized its logic. They believe the rankings represent something true, something deserved, something that reflects the actual order of the world. Doyle's arrival does not change the logic through persuasion. It changes it through demonstration, by showing what the rankings look like when someone operates entirely outside them and defeats their highest expressions without apparent effort. Once you have seen that, you cannot unsee it. The rankings that seemed absolute now seem provisional. The bosses that seemed inevitable now seem like specific people who happen to be the strongest specific people in a specific limited ecosystem, right up until they weren't. That is the political consequence of Doyle's activity in Seoul, separate from the specific individuals put in wheelchairs or on the ground. The ideology of the hierarchy has been cracked, not eliminated, You cannot eliminate a social hierarchy through a series of fights, no matter how decisive, but cracked in a specific, visible way that will propagate through the network over time. Ilgyung-hae is already different. Bae Cheol is gone. Im Jong-chan is gone in the functional sense. Park Jin-gu is not at Ilgyung anymore. He transferred his loyalty and his training obsession to Doyle's orbit. The school's ranking system exists, but its top has been cleared, and the people who moved into those positions moved into them with the full knowledge of what cleared the previous occupants. Sukdong-hae is similarly restructured. Wang Guokwei is down. The army he brought to Suman-hae is down. The territories he controlled through his model of simple overwhelming force are now territories where the question of what comes next is open in a way it was not before. Hwarang-hae is mid-resolution. The raid is happening. The drug lab is the target. Minso is handled. Jusanga is handled. Kyujin is the outstanding variable with a sniper round recently applied to him. Whatever the outcome of that variable, Hwarang's operational capacity to do what it has been doing is compromised regardless. The raid has penetrated deep enough that the secrecy the drug operation requires has been broken. Broken secrecy is its own consequence. A covert operation that has been made visible cannot go back to being covert. The drug lab at Hwarang existed because nobody who could do something about it knew it was there, and nobody who knew it was there could do something about it. Doyle's raid changes that second part. And changing the second part retroactively addresses the first, because now the information exists in a form that cannot be contained, distributed across everyone who participated in the raid, held in evidence that someone will eventually figure out how to use through channels that are not Doyle. Wang Dokel might figure out how to use it. The story has not closed his thread, and Wang Dokel is the legitimate institution, the person who tried through proper channels, who failed, who is now in possession of the knowledge that someone else succeeded through completely improper channels and produced information that might be usable in proper channels if applied correctly. That is an interesting possibility. The vigilante action creating evidence that the legitimate system can actually work with. Doyle producing, as a byproduct of his completely illegal multi-school gang dismantling operation, the kind of documented criminal enterprise that gives prosecutors something to work with and gives reform-minded teachers something to point at. The story has not gone there yet, but the pieces are on the board. The Death 10 tournament medal is also a piece on the board that has not been fully deployed. Ma Donggu won an underground tournament using blackhead techniques. That is not a fact that stays contained within the tournament. Underground fighting circuits have networks too. The people who ran the Death 10 know what they saw, know that a high school student from Seoul came in and won using combat techniques that do not emerge from normal training backgrounds. And that information moves through the underground fighting world the same way any interesting information moves. Who is paying attention to that information is a question the story has not answered. Park Kang-wook's arc has a trajectory that points somewhere beyond where the story has currently placed him. He reformed through a specific process: defeat, exposure to people he wronged, a gradual shift in what he was training himself toward. He went to Jeju, he competed in the Death 10, he threw himself off a platform to honor a debt. He is now a person who has been through a genuine transformation under genuinely difficult conditions. What does a reformed bully who has been through blackhead-adjacent training do with the rest of his life? The story has not addressed this, and the fact that it has not addressed it suggests it is going to matter. Kang-wook is not a completed arc. He is a person in process, and the story has invested enough in showing the process that the destination will carry weight when it arrives. Park Jin-gu's broken bones are also not the end of his story. They cannot be, given how carefully the story has built his specific obsession with closing the gap to Doyle. The gap just got very specifically measured. Kyujin is approximately the distance between where Jin-gu is now and the next level he needs to reach. Broken hands can heal. The collarbone and the leg can heal. What cannot heal is the memory of lying on that floor, and what that memory does to someone with Jin-gu's particular relationship to the gap between where he is and where he needs to be is going to be generative rather than defeating. Jin-gu gets back up. That is not a prediction so much as a statement about what kind of character the story has spent time building. The question is what version of Jin-gu gets up, and whether the healing period produces someone different or someone more completely the thing he was already becoming. Sul Mina has been filming everything. This is, on one level, the comedy thread, the romantic delusion, the misinterpreted threats, the husband who doesn't know he is a husband situation. But on another level, Sulmina with a camera is an archivist. She has documented every fight, every training session, every group photo, every moment of the anime club's formation and development. She has a visual record of what Doyle has done and who these people have become, and that record exists independently of any individual's memory. If Doyle ever tried to deny that the anime club is something real to him, tried to retreat to the pure transactional framing, tried to insist that this has all been a series of financial arrangements with no additional content, Sulmina's footage is the evidence against him. It is the documentation of what actually happened. The relationship reality in the record versus the relationship fiction in Doyle's self-description. Sulmina calling him her husband is funny. Sulmina having footage of Doyle designing a 2-month training program for a bullied kid who needed it. That is something else entirely. The story of how Doyle became the strongest man in the world is the frame the opening gestured toward. That video title, that framing device, it is telling you from the beginning that this is an origin story. Not a complete story, a first chapter. The first chapter of something that starts with 50,001 per bully and ends somewhere much further up. The world's strongest man does not begin as the world's strongest man. He begins as a person with a specific wound. The father who made the mother cry. The frozen bank accounts. The estrangement that turned an elite upbringing into a financial emergency. And he builds something in the space that wound created. Not despite the wound. Because of it. Because the specific circumstances of being broke and resentful and in possession of skills that far exceed the problems available to him in a Seoul high school produced exactly the situation where he had to find out who he was without his father's organization behind him. Doyle found out. He is the strongest person in every room he has entered in this story. That is not the interesting thing about him. The interesting thing is what he did with that capacity. He took the minimum viable contract, 50,001, one bully, and ended up building a network of reformed adversaries and trained allies and one deeply delusional filmmaker that together constitute something his father never gave him and possibly never gave him credit for being able to build. A family. That is the word the story keeps not saying. The anime club is a family. The group photos are family photos. The training is parenting in the way that people who were not parented well sometimes parent, practically, without ceremony, focused on what the other person actually needs, rather than what feels good to provide. Doyle's mother brought him to Korea to give him something that looked like a normal life. He has been building, in the space of one academic year, something that looks less like a normal life and more like the version of his father's organization that he would have designed if someone had given him the choice. Small, local, intensely loyal, organized around protection rather than elimination. The sniper shot fired across Hwarang High's campus in the dark is that organization's first truly blackhead-level operation. Its members are a bullied rich kid with a Death 10 medal, a muscle-obsessed former rival with broken bones, a reformed bully who went over a platform, a girl filming everything from behind a camera, and a handler named Gwiwon whose actual loyalties are becoming increasingly difficult to parse. Against them, whatever Kyujin is after a sniper round, whatever the 12 Nations reorganizes into after losing its sole operations, whatever Doyle's father decides to do with the information he has been quietly accumulating, and somewhere in Korea, a younger brother whose story has not started yet? The first arc ends here. On a dark campus, a shot in the air, a friend on the floor, and a story that has established everything it needs to establish to become something much larger. The question the next part has to answer is not whether Kyujin survives the sniper round, though that question matters. The real question is what Doyle does after Hwarang falls, because every school he has dismantled has been a contained problem, localized to Seoul's school gang network, addressable with the tools he brought to Korea. What comes next is not going to be contained. What comes next is the world above the 12 Nations, the level where Doyle's father operates, where the problems are not school bosses with drug labs but the structures those school bosses were feeding into, and the structures above those structures, and the people who sit at the top of systems that make Baecheo look like a classroom bully. Which, from Doyle's perspective, is exactly what Baecheo is. The strongest man in the world is going to need a bigger contract. 50,001 per bully was the beginning. The beginning is ending here, on Hwarang's campus, with a rifle in Doyle's hands and a family scattered across a dark building holding ground against the worst school in Seoul. The campus is quiet in the way that places get quiet after something irreversible has happened inside them. Not peaceful, not still. The kind of quiet that is really the absence of all the noise that was there before. The raid sounds, the fighting, the operational chaos of a coordinated assault on a building that was not designed to be assaulted. That noise has moved to its conclusions. The fights that were going to end have ended. The ones still running are running in the specific, compressed spaces where resolution has not yet arrived. Kyujin's space is one of those. Whatever the sniper round did, and the story is holding that information deliberately, making you sit with the uncertainty, the moment after it is the moment the whole arc has been building toward. Not the fight with Jusanga, not the raid itself, not the deep-fake declaration of war, or the coordinated entry, or Guiwan handling Minso with blackhead efficiency. This moment. The one where the outcome of everything the anime club has invested, every training session, every broken bone earned honestly, every photo taken after a brutal day on Jeju, gets weighed against what Hwarang's top represents. Park Jingu, on that floor, is the measure. He went in knowing the gap. He went in anyway. That is the most Jingu thing possible, and it is also, when you look at it clearly, the most anime club thing possible, because every person in that building tonight walked into something that exceeded their calculated capacity and did it because the people next to them were walking in too. That is what Doyle built, not a team, not an alliance, something that walks into the gap. The sniper shot is the proof that Doyle knows it, that he has been watching Jingu's trajectory through the building, tracking the sound and the structural logic of where the fight was going, positioning himself not for his own engagement, but for the moment when his person needed him. He was not fighting Kyujin. He was covering Jingu. The distinction matters because covering someone is not an operational decision. It is a relationship decision. It is what you do for people who are yours. 50,001 per bully. That was the opening line of this arrangement. The closing line of the first arc is a sniper shot fired across a dark campus to protect someone who swore loyalty after a defeat and spent a year making himself worth protecting. The math does not balance. It was never supposed to balance. The ledger Doyle started keeping when Donggu made his proposal has long since stopped being a financial document. It became something else, a record of what happens when the most dangerous person in the room decides, for reasons he would not articulate clearly if you asked him, that these specific people are worth his actual best. Somewhere across that campus, the shot has landed. The story is not done. It is barely started. But what it has built, in the space between a classroom knockout and a sniper round on a dark night, is something that will carry everything that comes next. Whatever the next arc costs, they earned the right to walk into it together. The world's strongest man is still becoming. And the becoming is the story.